by the Atma at the very end. So this is called Vedanta. And in this Vedanta, it directs itself to people who have this preparedness, preparation and the ability to see what is needed, to understand the truth of themselves as whole, free of all kinds of insecurities, free of sorrow, free of fear, free of impediments, limitations of all kinds, body-wise, mind-wise, object-wise, size-wise, space-wise, time-wise, all limitations, it removes. How can these few last pages remove? Because they were not there to begin with. Yeah. So you see the difference in the pramanas. The one in the first instance, in the first portion of the Vedas, delivers by action. You have to go through the action in order to get the result. But then seeing that the action and the results are unconnected, meaning they are not in your hands. What's happening here? You are left mystified. Okay, it's coming now. I think that yajna should right about mature now. It's not in your hands. Perhaps that's the gift to make you realize that. But in the second portion, you study about the I. When? No. You are the whole. When does it fructify? In the next life? In heaven? No. When? Right now. Because the first pramana is about anatma, only deals with anatma. And anatma and atma being different from one another, at least provisionally let us take. Being separated, because atma is not anatma, atma is atma. Anatma is not atma, all the objects and the subjects. So the subject and object are separated from each other. What are the factors of separation? Time, space, correct? These are the two. This is the news of Lord Yama. The two factors of separation are time and space. Between what this self who is doing yajnas wants, and then the results of those wants are separated from the person in time and space. In the second instance, in self-knowledge, which is the pramana of the Vedanta, which is the name for the pramana of Vedanta, what is the separating factor between you and what you want to be? Ignorance. It's not time or space. So the first portion of the Veda is heavily into action and results. It also deals with knowledge, rather know-how, kalpa. Chodana kalpa means what? Know-how of rituals, how to lay the bricks, how to, not make them cracked, how to put them in a nice design, how to light the fire. You can't smoke a cigarette and then throw it there. That's very unsanctimonious, horrible. Everything has to be done in a sacred manner. And then how to do all these things. So after, it also deals with knowledge. The how to is the knowledge. It also deals with jnanam. Because it's a pramana, it's a means of knowledge. So what should it deliver? Knowledge. Yeah. What kind of a knowledge is it? No, first portion, Amma. Yeah. Yeah. What kind of knowledge is it? It's a knowledge which needs to be chased by action in order to gain the results. It's that kind of a knowledge. It's a knowledge that precedes action, that has to be succeeded by action. If you're hungry, for example, and you have the recipe for khichdi somewhere you see on the internet. Oh, this is how you do it. Oh, wash the rice and dal, soak for 4 hours, and then cook it together. And while that is cooking, make a nice masala of vegetables and spices in a little ghee and steam that. Oh, put salt. Oh, no, wonderful. Put lemon juice. Oh, wow. And then what? Mix the two. And then eat. Serve hot with a side of chutney and yogurt. Oh, this is so good. Does that satisfy the hunger? What do you have to do? You have to go to friendly market. You know. You have to bring all the things. Then you have to spend 4 hours soaking. In this country, nobody believes in everything has to be instant. So while you're at the market, you buy a soaker. That what needs 4 hours you can soak in 15 minutes. This is what this country is all about. And with the help of all this gadgetry, you have to cook the khichdi. You can't just cook it here. You have to actually buy the ingredients. It's a hands-on thing. So the first portion of the Veda as the Pramana, it also gives knowledge. It also gives knowledge that you can never know about it in 100 years anywhere else. It also gives a knowledge that's meaningful and useful. For who? The people who want to buy that knowledge. The knowledge of the finite it gives. But the finite being separated from you, the infinite. The finite being your own projection, as the second portion is going to reveal. This is a sneak preview. And the finite being your own projection, as it were. What is happening here? The finite is seen as something different from me. And then there is this knowledge which is just really the know-how of how to produce less of a distance between the subject and the object, how to eat up the distance between the subject and the object, how to unite the subject with the object of desire, with the object of choice. For that, it's not just enough to know. I know, I love cake. Did I become one with cake? No. How is it possible? How is it possible to become one with cake? Oneness happens only after that, what is that place, famous place in Eugene? Everyone goes there. Sweet life, yeah. So you have to go to the sweet life, then you have to, have a sweet. Life will only be sweet after going to the counter, picking one of these, and you say, I'll have that one. And then you sit down, and then there should be an appropriate drink to go, hot drink to go with it. Some brew of your choice. And then first you have to look at it. Oh, beautiful. Free of gluten. Free of fat. Wishful imagination. Free of ghee. Free of sugar. Nowadays you can have sugar without having sugar. Free of sugar. Free of eggs. Vegetarian idiot has gone. So, free of eggs. But not free of taste. Somehow, miraculously. Free of all ingredients, but not free of taste. And you savor it. First you look at it, and then all the senses are involved. Mouth waters faster than the dog of Pavlov. And then you cut into it with your teeth. Don't wait for the knife. You just sink the teeth into it. And before you know it, you're just holding an empty hand. It's gone. It's been breathed in. Then you can say, the subject and the object have become one. It's not enough to say, I want cake. It's not enough to know that I want cake. It's not enough to have the best cake recipe. You have to actually bridge the difference. And what does the first portion of the Veda do? The first portion of the Veda helps you to find those ways which were unknown to you to bridge these differences. things that are differentiated from you by time and space. The second portion of the Veda, cuts all this. It just cuts to the chase. It's a shortcut. And what does it say? It says this, it's a no frills thing. No frills Vedanta. It doesn't have introduction and conclusion and in between. It just says that all those things that you are wanting in time and space, that means what? You were thinking that time is real and separated from you. And in fact, it's an annoyance. It's an annoyer. It's a controller of your life. You were thinking that space is what separates you from others. And sometimes from your own thinking, when it is located here. And you think that space is a separator. Time is a separator. But really speaking, all those are projections out of you. Just like in dream, you have created a body for yourself. You have created a certain time frame. It's either morning in the dream or afternoon or evening. And then you have created also space between you and other finite and, sentient and insentient objects. You have created that space. Where did that space come from? Don't say measuring tape. No, that was not there in the dream. You created the space in the dream. You decided how much time in the dream. You decided that. So the space rose out of you. Time rose out of you. And that is, and you woke up and laughed to yourself. Because the dream spanned several years and somehow magically you were in a different time. And you laughed at yourself. And Vedanta, this pramana is going to reveal that you have no way of knowing ever. Even in a Janma Shatantarepi, even in 100 different lifetimes, it's not possible to know that you are the author of time and you are the author of space. Not only that they are a dependent reality, dependent on you. They don't have an independent existence to tyrannize you, to terrorize you. Oh. And then of course, the new graduate from the first portion of the Veda is still into doing. Bhi kya karega? What will the person say? I understand that I am the author of time and space. Please tell me, I'm going to note it down. What do I have to do? What are the ingredients required? I'm writing with the glasses, but never mind. What are the ingredients required to do this? And give me a good muhurtam. When? Muhurtam means an auspicious date. Certain days are auspicious. So give me an auspicious date when I should try this time-space thing out. And the Upanishad has only one thing to say. Please study another Upanishad, because obviously this one, has not shed your ajnanam. Please study another Upanishad. Yes. It hasn't shed your orientation that you are controlled by time and space, that you are finite and what you want, including the wanter, which is just a superimposition, like the snake on the rope. Right? Yeah, I always get. Yeah, correct. Like the snake is superimposed on the rope. This is your own superimposition. Time and space, depend on their being, on you, who is conscious of time, who is conscious of space. Time is not conscious of you. Time is not saying, come on, chop chop, get with it. Who are you? 4 o'clock. I'm 4 o'clock. Make me my tea. Space doesn't say, I need space from you. So really speaking, time and space are objects of consciousness. Whose consciousness? Don't say neighbors, gods. No, somebody always looking up. Whose consciousness? Your own consciousness. How many consciousnesses are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So many consciousnesses, so little time. See, it's all about time. How many consciousnesses? How do you know that? How do you know there's only one consciousness? Why not many consciousnesses? And this is what what are those people? Not Sankhyas. The Sankhyas also say that a little bit. The Vaisheshikas. Vaisheshikas and Naiyayikas. Naiyayikas means the so-called logicians. And these Vaisheshikas means those who have a lot of time, on their hands. And they say, everything is about logic. They say, why not say that there are many authors of consciousness? Idam Jagat Sakartrikam. Meaning, this Jagat is a well thought out place. Everything comes, easily. Hunger is there, fruits are there, flowers are there, so many things are there. This Jagat is a solution oriented place. And therefore, it must have required some conscious intelligence to create this. Okay, this much we can agree. Idam Jagat Sakartrikam. Kartra Saha Vidyate remains along with the Karta. Why did you say Kartra? That's the third case of Karta. Along with takes third case. So Kartra Saha Vidyate Sakartrikam. It always is there. It has to be, it's a product of a creation. All right. Here is where we stop agreeing. This is the final place of agreement. They will say further, Idam Jagat Aneka Kartrikam. Means what? Many creators. Anekatmakatvat. Anything that ends in fifth case is the logic, is the answer. Because of, it means. Fifth case means because of. Anekatmakatvat. Asya Jagataha Anekatmakatvam Asti. This Jagat has this property of having many things, manifold and variegated universe, to use a cliche. So this Jagat has this quality of this manyness. So why not say Anekatmakatvat, Anekatmakatvam asti, because of which Anekatmakatvat, Aneka Kartrikam. Many people were involved, many consciousnesses were involved in creating this Jagat. Just in case a few of them were unconscious, the other consciousnesses came up to fill their place and create this fantastic Jagat. And of course, when you use logic, you have to give an example. Like what? Like we say, what is that overused thing? All men are mortal. Socrates is a man. That's you have to give hetu. You have to give an example to buttress your argument. You have to give the hetu here. And what is the hetu? Prasadadivat. Prasada means not prasada, don't confuse. Here the long a. What is it? Prasada. Prasada, not prasada. Prasada. Prasada means palace. When you want to make a king's palace, can just one person do it on their own? No. Absolutely not. You need carpenters, you need plumbers, you need mechanics, you need all these people, you need people who put in the windows and people who stain the glass and then put in stained glass things, and you need some people to haul the wood, and you need some people to dig the well, you need some people to do this, make the windows, make the doors, make the floors. So we have seen the prasada being constructed, and we have seen a whole crew of people constructing this. Hundreds of people are involved in, polishing, sawing, hacking, making into all these pillars, etc. Somebody is making windows, doors, pillars, floors, everything. We have seen that. So we extend the logic and say, why not this Jagat also is the product of celestial craftsmanship of many craftspeople, you know. All Vishwakarmas, there the celestial carpenter is called Vishwakarma. So there's so many Vishwakarmas are there and they are all doing this. That is because this is a flawed logic. A flawed logic because you cannot prove a second source of consciousness. You cannot prove it. And just because you thought of extending some foolish logic in the wrong way, you cannot prove. In fact, you don't need to prove. I am is there, correct? And I am is just that single consciousness alone. That's why everybody says I am, I am, I am. Nobody says I think and therefore I am. That I am is that spontaneous consciousness which is there. And then in keeping with the human desires, I want everything to be one. I'm trying to bridge the gap. And that's what this desperate gap between the desirer and the desire is all about. Because I can't stand any gaps. And what does Vedanta do? Removes the separating factor between the desirer and the desired. Sarvan kaman samashnute. All the desires are fully felt or fulfilled in the wake of which knowledge that time is me, space is me, object is me, subject is of course me. And this subject was subject to delusion. That's why I was keeping on wanting all kinds of nonsensical things and then striving for them. But here all the wants are gone. Gone means what? They are not rearing their heads because and replaying the story of a personal disenchantment and discontent, because I have been repatriated with a contented eye. In fact, in the beginning two things subsist. Yeah. Kritam pibantau sukritasya loke, there's always the dual. Two people are, as it were, drinking the fountain from the fountain of desired objects. And one of them is only addicted. The other one is just watching. From this same Upanishad. And so, how many people are really there? One. Who is the other? Shadow. When the shadow is taken to be real, this is what happens. So the pursuit is not going after the desire. The pursuit is knowing that there is no difference between myself and what I desire. What I desire is not separated from me by place or time. It's only separated by me, by the discontent which is spewed by self-ignorance. When self-ignorance spits, it spits out discontentment. Yeah, that's what it is. That's what it is. And I don't like the spit. I say, oh, disgusting, I cannot handle it. And so you can't keep on cleaning up the spit because that it's spitting constantly. Therefore what? You tackle the spitter, right? Yeah, you can't keep crafting new spittoons. Okay, here let me catch. Because I can't handle this. That's like going backwards. That's like eating this way, You have that, you say, why you always have to eat like this? Let me eat like this. Let's go a roundabout solution. It's not even a solution. Ridiculous. So instead of crafting new and varied, beautiful spittoons made of teak and rosewood, mahogany, to catch the spit, because I have to make a statement. I have the best, discontent catching device which I have built in my workshop. What kind of a workshop? Of the idle mind. And I have built in this workshop, and I'm going to catch this discontent wherever it arises. It's just a roundabout and a finite solution. to the infinite problem of self-ignorance. And therefore what? I have to tackle the one who is spitting so irresponsibly. Now this makes more sense if you are Indian, because in India the spitting is a big problem. Yeah, they chew this some red color horror. It's not red in color at all. It's green. It's a betel leaf. But they chew it with a little bit of lime, not the one you keep in the fridge, but which is on the wall. And and the action of this green lime, this green betel leaf, along with that white colored lime, makes the mouth and the juices therein red. And then of course it creates much more juice than you can hold in the mouth. And you have this urge to spit, because what else can you do? And then the government says, please do not spit here, because every wall, every street corner, every surface is covered with this red horror. And people have mastered the art of spitting. You can project all over, this red horror. And then the government, that's how I got this idea. The government provides these spittoons, things that come like this, like a dustbin, but just for spit. It's called a spittoon. Yeah, some version of a spit bin, I suppose. And so this spittoon is like this. And it's got a wide mouth, which makes it very difficult to miss it, So from any angle, any distance, you should be able to do this. But people don't sometimes, most of the time. And it's less these days, but earlier this was a very big problem. So they would spit wherever it said, please do not spit here, and that sign would be covered. The sign itself would be nicely, abhisheka with spit would be done. So the government did a crackdown. So because first the government was also a little muddled. They thought there are not enough spittoons in town. So we'll create more and more nicer ways of catching the spit. So if there is a spittoon on the left and a spittoon on the right and a spittoon in front and spittoon in the back and spittoon above, spittoon below, then there won't be any spit. Correct? This is Vaisheshika thinking, logical. But they found that there was spit everywhere around except inside the container. Then they said, we have to crack down not on we don't have to put more, containers to catch this spit. What do we have to catch? The people who are spitting. The spitters we have to catch. So they started to catch them and fine them on the spot. Then naturally the problem, became less. I won't say it resolved, but it became less, much less. So if discontentment, fear, sorrow is the spit of self-ignorance, you can't just have some holding containers, okay, here this little pot catch my discontentment. How? First of all, it's cracked. And then to boot, it has a hole underneath. What is it going to catch? No, a little bit of discontentment, let it catch. What is this called? Therapy. Gone. And then another pot you bring. You bring the pot of distraction. You bring the pot of something else. Bring the pot of Prozac. All these are little spittoons to catch the sadness, to catch the fear, but really what is needed is to catch the culprit, not, whatever it is spewing out. There is no other way of catching the culprit than through this means of knowledge. And to catch this thief who is a miscreant, who is giving me misinformation about myself. Because that looking at that spit is unsavory, and this is what I think I am, because that's what it is spitting out. You are discontented, you are an idiot, you are a loser, you will never succeed in life. You will never be able to gain what you want. And you'll always be sick. Mentally, physically, emotionally, somehow you'll be sick. In fact, you make me sick. All these thoughts and, they are the offshoot. They are what is spewed out by self-ignorance. You have to catch the self-ignorance by the collar. Shake it all about. Zip up its mouth so that it doesn't talk anymore and gives wrong messages of incompleteness. Sit on top of it for good measure, so it's totally flattened. This is an enactment of how the pramana works in the second half of in the last portion of the Veda. Second portion of the Veda. It works by eliminating self-ignorance. Self-ignorance is not a parallel entity to that free, limitless consciousness, single consciousness that you are. Self-ignorance is a dependent reality like anything else. So once you catch this self-ignorance by a logic that is called Prathama Malla Nyaya, like if you want to become the champion wrestler, you don't have to knock every puny fellow in town. You have to catch the champion, the reigning champion wrestler called Malla. The first Malla, everyone is called Malla, but the first Malla, the reigning Malla, you catch and you knock him out and you become the champion, correct? Yeah. This is how self-knowledge prevails over self-ignorance, because it takes you back to the root cause, addresses the root, not the fruits, the seeds, the leaves, but the root. And thereby, when the root has been, addressed, the samsara tree is uprooted, felled forever. So it cannot produce fruits of disenchantment, leaves that drip sorrow. It cannot do that. Flowers that are finite, it can never do that anymore, because the whole tree called self-ignorance has been uprooted. The tree is mithya. The tree is also Bhagavan in a way, because it is ultimately dependent on Bhagavan. And in that sense, ignorance is not self-made. It's a capital that one was born with, so to speak. But why? But how? I told you we can't keep discussing things that are not really there. That's not how I'd like to spend my time anyway. So therefore, the second way of looking at the pramana in the last portion of the Veda is not that it is asking you to do something in order to become better equipped, in order to become more knowledgeable, in order to have things that you want more and more, or in order to have more of the things of what you want, in order to keep things at bay that you don't want. It's not asking you to do or to continue to be a striver. What is it doing? It is revealing the truth of you as a being, not a doing. As a beer, not a doer. You just are. And in the first instance, the working of the pramana is two-step working. First, it provides you with a know-how, and then you have to act in accordance with that knowledge in order to perhaps gain the result. Here, the knowledge itself is enough to set the sun of samsara. The knowledge sets samsara. Pratyastam, Adi Shankara used the word. Pratyastamitam means that from which all differences, names and forms have set. It calls it, it pulls the curtain on samsara, makes it nightfall instantly. But of course, having a new graduate from the first portion of the Veda will ask the question, now that I have this knowledge, what do I have to do to experience it? Now that I have this wholeness, what do I have to do to feel it? And that question comes because one still has one foot in the door of the first portion of the Veda. Get that foot out before the door closes. Otherwise it will use you, it will squeeze you. That's what it will do. So that question is not pertinent here. Because this is what is the knowledge of what already is being revealed. So that you can understand it and gain freedom from sorrow. Gain as though gain. So after which there is nothing to do. And this itself becomes a terrifying prospect. All this time I was enjoying doing, I am enjoying doing. Now I have to stop and just sit and stare into space. Now I have to keep on just doing, sitting. I can't do anything that I enjoy. That's why I stopped attending classes. Because what's the point? Because I'm a doer. I believe in results. Why are you a doer? Because I can't stand myself. That is really the honest answer. I can't stand myself if I sit quietly for more than 5 minutes. All kinds of monsters come out, not from under the bed. Yeah. From within me, they are unleashed. More spits of self-ignorance. And so therefore I have to, So it's not that I enjoy doing. I don't enjoy not doing. That's really what it is. That's the crux here. If you enjoy doing, do. No problem. That means if you don't do also, you should be all right. But you're dependent on the doing because you don't enjoy not doing. You don't think that just being is enough. You have to constantly produce in order to gain approval. The approval rating is based on how much I have produced. This is the whole thing. Everything needs approval rating. Even Facebook, you count the number of approvals. And then when you send this tweet out, then that also has a basis, that also has a count. How many times it has been retweeted, you count. It's not enough for you to send one tweet. I had apples today to eat. This is what people tweet about, not anything life changing. They put their breakfast on the net. And then people are mad, Suddenly it catches fire. It goes viral. And goes viral means what? Everybody is busy because some idiot was inspired, perhaps under the influence of some drugs. Oh, this is such a holy statement. I had apples for breakfast. Oh my God, this is earth-shattering. And that fellow, without anything better to do, retweets it to the bunch. And because he's higher in the Twitter world, he's sitting on a higher branch. And his tweets mean more because he's got some kind of an account that is very high. This is what is the prasada of interacting with teenagers. This is how I know all this.
Followers.
No?
Tweets. They have followers.
Yeah, because if you're higher, because if you have some kind of a verified account, and the verified account is also based on approval, how many followers you have, and then and all these followers retweet the same mundane this thing. I had an apple for breakfast, and then suddenly you became very famous because you said you had an apple for breakfast, and you say, I feel good today because I have been retweeted out of existence. And I shut down Twitter for a whole hour and a half because everybody was busy retweeting my tweet. Crazy. Totally crazy. The lengths that people will go to get this approval. seal of approval. From what? Another seeker who is also seeking approval. Anyonya ashraya. At least if you want to seek approval, go to a source that doesn't need approval. Like Bhagavan. Pray for approval from that source. But the mistake, this is mistake upon mistake upon mistake. And that's why one is just, being rained on by all these pits. This is what is happening. So you seek approval from someone who is also needing approval. And so that approval becomes what? Sporadic. Unreliable. Sporadic. Rare. And eventually non-existent. Just like how the original caregivers were. They were also mostly disapproving, rarely approving, sporadic, inconsistent, based on their ragadveshas and their fallibility. So are you any better off? No. So therefore this pramana is a very, very special pramana. Even more special, I would say, even though the whole Veda is a pramana. The Vedanta as a pramana has got that oneness in it. Shabdaika pramanam. That Shabda itself is the pramana. The words itself deliver what you want without you needing to be transformed into a doer. Into a doer that is a result of self-loathing. The self-loath makes one into a helpless doer. Here one can continue to do, but that helplessness, that pressure from the doing in order to gain approval or in order to be okay with myself, in order to be regarded as a producer of wonderful things all the time, that takes a back seat. You do because you enjoy doing, and it becomes effortless because you're not doing it to gain something. You do because it helps someone. Those are the reasons to do. You do because it gives you joy. But it's a different manifestation of the same joy that you have even when you don't do. That's why it's a very special pramana. Because the words of the Upanishad strike a prepared mind. And when they strike a mind that is prepared by the three things we talked about, dharma, what else? Viveka and vairagya. When they strike that mind, they remove this culprit called self-ignorance totally, completely. They make self-ignorance poof, disappear. That is the specialness of this pramana. Nothing more to do, nothing to cook, nothing to clean. Still it's a forever party. Yeah, without cooking or cleaning, one is in joy. And one sees how foolish one has been in trying to keep on accumulating things as a ticket to happiness. The ticket to happiness is seeing that the self is never ticked off, is never upset, is never discontented to begin with. So to discover that self merely through the words of the teaching, which are deployed in two ways by the teacher. One is to understand what the Upanishad is saying when it says that you don't have attributes. Attributes are finite. You are infinite because you are attributeless. To understand that. And the second thing is to remove the ignorance. That is how it is removed. First by showing what it is, and secondly negatively to show what you are not, because both are important. Because there is identification. That's why you have to say you are not the mind. You are not the body. You are not the senses. You are that consciousness to which everything, including the body, mind, senses, become evident, and it is not any of these. The body is not separate from consciousness. Consciousness is not the body. Mind is nothing but consciousness. Consciousness is not the mind. Senses are consciousness. Everything is consciousness. Consciousness is not any one thing. It's like a prism, which is what? colorless, but it includes all colors. It projects every color itself free of the color which it projects. It's beautiful. That's how it is. So, this is the subject matter of the small, slim booklet, never a book, always a booklet, called Vedanta. And even though they are all pramana together, because of the special nature of this pramana is that it's the ultimate pramana. If the pramana comes through words, what is the sadhana? What is the practice I have to do? Shravanam is the main sadhana. That is the meditation. If you are able to sit through class and focus on everything that is being said, that is 1 hour of meditation. So 8 to 10:30, 2.5 hours of uninterrupted meditation.
Maybe one.
Pardon me?
Maybe one
Maybe one what?
successful hour.
So, this is ideal situation. So 2.5 hours of unremitted meditation. This is meditation because you are focusing totally on one thing. You are not looking at who is coming, who is going, what is happening. You are able to have and sustain that focus while the pramana is operating on you. Yes. Oh, but what is the anesthesia? That's why we throw in the jokes. That's the anesthesia. Yeah. That's why the anesthesia. So this is the sadhanam, shravanaika sadhanam. Shravanam is the eka sadhana. Only one practice you need is to be in a place of listening. And for that purpose, whatever you need to do, if you need to stand on the head before class or in the break so that blood flows, that's the whole idea. Do that. If you need coffee, do that. If you need tea, have that. That is what you need, is to be awake, to be receptive, both physically, mentally and emotionally. The doors are open for the knowledge to want to sit, not to just visit briefly and say hi at the door and go away. No, you want the knowledge to walk in. So maintaining the place empty of other pursuits, other thoughts, other desires, raga, dvesha, etc. is all part of this sadhana of this meditation. Shravanam is the meditation. Always people say, oh, other ashrams meditate for 8 hours a day. Why your ashram doesn't meditate? Because we, we are meditating. Yeah. In fact, it's even better. Other ashrams don't teach. Nobody talks about that. Other ashrams do this. You're not doing this. Other ashrams don't teach. They're all about different sadhanas. They're all trying to still prepare themselves. Many ashrams don't teach. Yeah. Yeah. They don't teach. You just go, you do yoga in the morning. Yeah, that's good. It's another kind of sadhana. Keeps the body limber. I recommend it highly. And you don't have to become a yoga freak, 10-15 minutes a day enough, just to keep everything limber. And then, they do 4 hours of yoga. Then they sit, do trataka. What is trataka? Yeah. You focus on some candle, and then you close your eyes and continue to see the candle in the what is that called? In the mind's eye, I suppose you can call it that. Because see, even now you can try this. You just kind of focus intensely on something, like Swamiji's photograph there. You keep looking, and then you close your eyes, you see an inner Swamiji, in the eye, correct? Because that memory of that is imprinted on the eyes. And you continue to see that. And the whole point of this Trataka is to continue to see that constantly. I just say, why? Just open the eyes and look if you want to look again. But apparently there are certain health benefits, there are certain mental benefits. I'm not denying any of it. I just don't know enough. I've never bothered too much with this. But whatever it is, there are some benefits. But the question is, what kind of benefits? Finite or infinite? Is it going to bring you closer to the infinite? Perhaps it's going to make me ready, but that's where it stops. So here we don't have too much meditation. We do meditate. It's not that we don't emphasize it, but it's more homework. In class, you meditate while in class. So once the Sahana Vavatu mantra has been chanted, that is like what is called Digbandhana. There is a invisible current of, a kind of a relationship, an invisible connection that is established between the source of knowledge and the seeker of knowledge. And then that's why the mantra is always in dual. May you and I be protected. May you and I be nourished. So many people may be there, but it's always you and I in the teaching situation. So that invisible connection is there, which is always there, but which is invoked in the mantra. And that's why it's called Shanti mantra. So that after that, no one moves, there is no disturbance. Yeah. And so this is the whole idea, is that the whole thing is set up as a meditation. Learning itself is the sadhana. Shravanam. So all I have to do is keep the ears clean. That's all. No foreign bodies in the ears, no foreign bodies in the heart, in the mind, no foreign desires, no foreign pursuits. So Viveka Vairagya takes care of that. Dharma takes care of just, not letting the desires overpower. What more do we want? Nothing more. And this is how the pramana works. It removes, it catches the culprit of self-ignorance, shakes it all about, destroys it, and in so doing destroys samsara. But then you just said the culprit wasn't really there. Yeah, but do you know that? Do you know that? Say no, come on. No, not yet. If you knew that, you would not be here. So, either you don't know that or you're in the process of knowing that. So even, like the child, we all started with the story of the child who won't go to bed because there are monsters in the closet, monsters under the bed. So what do you have to do to such a child? The mother has to come in and say that here is some milk and cookies, look, all the monsters are walking away. Or you close your eyes. If you open your eyes, they will not walk away. So you keep your eyes closed. You sit on the bed where they cannot climb the bed. So I will escort them out. And then you make some shoo-shoo sounds. And then you take some kind of a feather duster and dust them out. And then what do? You say, all clean. All monsters have gone. Look, they are enjoying. Don't look. But I just trust, because if you look, they'll come back. I'll tell you that they are enjoying underneath your window, far away from your bed and your room. They're enjoying in the backyard a little repast of the cookies that we made for them earlier. Then the child says, now I can go to sleep. Correct? Same thing. So this non-existent self-ignorance is bashed up, yeah, by the concerted action of numerous Upanishads, bringing in invisible cudgels. They just bash up bad self-ignorance. Did you spit discontentment? Shut up, you idiotic, useless, good-for-nothing being. Go away. Don't bother my student ever again, says the mother in the Upanishad. Don't you dare come and bother this student. This jiva is not going to come for you because this jiva is under the protection, the chhatra, under the umbrella of the pramana. You will not be rained on by all these spittings. You can spit away. You inglorious one, get out of our lives. That is what the whole beauty is. The problem is non-existent, so it doesn't need a solution. But the teacher pretends that it needs the solution because the teacher is only keeping in with the Upanishad, and the Upanishad pretends that there is a solution which needs to be deployed. The non-existent wound is tended to. First it is, the bloodletting happens. This is what is called coming up of the unconscious. And then there is a salve and a wound. This is the Upanishad. And then there is the bandage called Mananam and Nididhyasanam. If it is a deep wound, it needs that. And then what? Then after that, no scar, no war, no battle cry, no battleground, nothing except the truth of the self, the glory of the self alone presides. These invisible battles we have to enact, to rage these battles, to wage these wars, these raging wars. We have to it's all as though. Oh, so the teaching is also as though. Of course, you bet it is as though. As though student who says, oh, when will I get moksha? As though teacher who says, well, you will get moksha at such. Teacher will not say that. This is all it is. It's a game. It's fun. It's fun when you know it. Shishyacharya taya tathaiva पितृपुत्राद्यात्मना भेदतः स्वप्ने जागृतिवाय एष पुरुषो माया परिभ्रामितः तस्मै श्री दक्षिणामूर्तये जगद्गुरवे नमः. This is what Dakshinamurti says. Stotra says that which the whole world has been crafted into divisions: son, father, mother, sister, brother, daughter, child, teacher, student. All these differences are gone. That's all. Because the reality is shown to be more than what I can see. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.